everyone. How are you? Well, first of all, thank you. Yeah, cold, right? Thank you for coming out on such a cold day to Mayor McLaughlin's Senior Fall Coffee. We're doing it a little later this year, but that's part of that is strategically planned, so we can assist you with the tax rebate, which Mayor McLaughlin and Trustee Ruzick will be talking to you about shortly. Can everybody hear me in the back there? Are you good? Okay. With that, I'd like to again welcome you again on coming out on this brisk day, and with that, I'd like to introduce Mayor Dan McLaughlin.
Thanks, Joe, and good morning. Joe's office and his staff that are in the back, they do a great job putting these coffees and some other programs on through the course of the year, and apparently they couldn't find a good speaker for today, so they asked me to come and talk a little bit about what's going on in the village. But we also thought we'd tie it into a little discussion about the rebate and some help for anybody that wants to try and get that application done today. So just introduce real quick, Trustee Ed Schuster's with us, Trustee Pat Guerra. Trustee Pat Guerra, temporarily, we call her Gimpy. Little accident, put her in bad shape. And then Trustee Ruzick I'll have come up in a little bit. So before I start talking a little bit about the village and answering a few questions, I wanted to ask you guys a few questions. How many get the Orland Park Public that for the last year or two we've been inserting in the Prairie newspaper? That's the magazine that's on the table. Does everybody kind of get that? Does everybody see that? All right, because we were getting kind of an indication that people weren't seeing it or not realizing it was in the paper, so we're going to start mailing that direct to homes instead of having it in the newspaper, so you can watch for it. This is the current edition. Joe's office is working on the next edition. When will that come out?
December 5th, that will come out via the Prairie too, that Thursday. I think that's the 4th.
Oh, that's still going to be in the Prairie?
That's, yeah, starting January 1.
All right, so next year.
In 2015, we're going to start doing direct mail, so we have one more.
All right. So the first week of December, watching the Prairie newspaper for the latest edition, because there's a lot of good information in there, things that can help you and also let you know what's going on. One other question I wanted to ask you. So how many people are, actually two more questions. How many people here use computers regularly? Pretty much everybody, so you're staying in touch with some of the village things through the computer? Not so much? About half. All right, so we gotta think about that. Make sure we're getting, we want to make sure we get our information out to everybody and trying to find out who uses what, who reads the newspapers, who uses the internet, who gets the public and who doesn't. So, yeah.
Quick comment.
All right.
Public Works area is very good when you have a problem with street lights or so forth. Send it in.
Oh, right.
And they respond.
Yeah, no, they're very good. You know, it sounds silly to have you call in for a pothole or something, but occasionally a pothole will show up, and maybe we don't have anybody driving down that street for a couple of days and we don't always notice it, or a light that just went out. So we're very receptive and very willing to jump on those issues. Call us and let us know when you see something that's not quite right. And then the last question, how many people here are from Smith Crossing, live in Smith Crossing? All right, so that far south part of town is another area we got to try and do a better job of communicating with. So, but I was going to talk a little bit about what's going on in the village and just kind of hit some of the highlights and answer a few questions. And then Carol Ruzick is our trustee and chairman of our finance committee. So Carol was instrumental in working out the details of how the rebate would be done this year, and she had the idea to start having some kind of individual help offered at the village hall, different meetings and places like this. So instead of everybody kind of being on their own, Trustee Ruzick wanted to start bringing the rebate process to you and make it a little bit easier. So she'll talk about that in a little bit. So first of all, LaGrange Road. All right, it's a mess. And with all the horses up and the equipment out and all the things going on, everybody is kind of already getting a little bit frustrated. But I've had two people in the last few days say, how long is that LaGrange Road project going to go on? Well, the first question I ask them is, how long do you think it's been going on? A lot of people say a couple of years. And really, this LaGrange Road widening project, going to 6 lanes in each direction, started in the spring. It's a $100 million project. And one of the things that makes it very complicated and longer to get completed is the fact that there's 11 retaining walls needed, which is very involved work. If you've driven down LaGrange Road and you see the retaining wall at Payless Country Club, another one at that wetlands, about 140th or so, there's 11 of those in this project. So that took a lot of time, and those are all done now. So I think the work will start going pretty quick, but it's still a very large project. It'll go to the end of next year. So we got another year to put up with it. But hopefully, as things start getting completed, certain sections will be kind of open and a lot better shape. But through the whole process, we have worked with IDOT, the Illinois Department of Transportation, and the contractor. We've sat down with them on a number of occasions to basically say we need to keep the 2 lanes open in each direction that we've always had because we have so much traffic here. So they've done a pretty good job of, even though there's construction and lane changes, we've always had 2 lanes open in each direction, with the exception of an occasional equipment has to be moved or something, they'll temporarily shut 1 lane down. But they've done a pretty good job of keeping everything open as it always was. It still makes it look a little more harrowing driving down the streets when it seems a little narrower with the horses and all that, but basically they're doing a pretty good job. It's a 2-year project. They started in the spring with actual construction. It'll go till this time or a little later next year. So, but everything's going well, and it'll be great when it's done. I don't know how many of you may live in an area that this last spring we had some rains and storms that were a little more than we've seen in the last few years. So we've had you've experienced more than most. But there's a lot of flooding. We always know we had certain areas that were lower and have a tendency to have a problem. But this spring we had so many heavy rains, kind of one on top of each other. It kind of exposed a few more areas or showed us some of the existing areas were worse than we realized. So the village board in our budget process worked out a plan to get an awful lot of flood relief work done this next year. And part of it's by selling bonds to bring in the money we need to get a lot of work done now. We had been doing flood relief projects a little at a time as we can afford it in our budget. We realized this year we need to get ahead of it. So we're putting several $1 million into the budget this year just to work on flooding programs. We hope to alleviate a lot of the worst problems, but I'm sure we'll be doing it for several years too. So, but we are addressing the flooding issues that were exposed in the spring. And 9750, which has always been a hot topic for the last few years, the luxury apartment building on 143rd Street. I will tell you that it's way ahead of projections, doing very well. It's been open now about a year and a half or so, but at about a year of opening and leasing, about a year they had 90% occupation, which is way ahead of projections. They are now getting around 94%. Well, you don't get much better than that because there's always some turnover. So they reached they went over their projections very quick. And I'll tell you why that's good for us. First of all, we get money back from that apartment building developer. First of all, they're paying us back just like they would pay a bank back for the construction loan. But then the incentive that we offer them to make the building the way we want it to fit into our plans, the incentive gets paid back to us through a few different ways. And one is they're reaching and getting above their projections. So we share in their success, basically. So we are starting to get money back from them earlier than we expected. In addition, the construction loan that we gave them to build that, they had every ability to go and get construction loans through banks in Indianapolis, where they're from, and some other sources of financing. But we had a concern that if, knowing what the economy was like the last 4 or 5 years, that if there's any chance that they struggled and went out of business in the middle of this project, that we are left with a white elephant and we have to fight the banks to get control of our property back. So we thought that it would be better if we made the construction loan to the developer, build the building the way we want, keep it on schedule, that if anything did happen to the developer, if they did have any problems business-wise or went out of business, we still have the property. It's our building, our property. We could just keep the project going. Well, as it turns out, it never had that problem, but that was the reason we went into the construction loan part of it. And I'll tell you this, because our credit rating is so good, we are paying under 2% interest on the bonds we sold to finance that building. They are paying us, I think is it 5%? They're paying us 5% interest. So we're making money on the money. We're making money on the real estate taxes they're going to start paying because they were just assessed way over what we projected. So there's more income that way too than we expected. They're ahead of projections on leasing, so we get the waterfall from that success. So actually the project's working out very well. The people in there are very happy, and we think it's going to be a big success, and it's doing what we wanted to. We wanted to attract attention and spur development in that downtown triangle development. So, getting to the next topic, you probably read a little bit about University of Chicago. University of Chicago, great reputation nationwide, if not worldwide. They had an interest in doing a medical center in our downtown. They wanted to be part of where all this action was and be close to the train station and all that. So they proposed a building at 143rd and LaGrange. Then they had to go to the process through the state to get approval. There's a state, Illinois Health Facility Planning Board that oversees and approves any kind of development with hospitals, medical centers. And they got a unanimous approval to build a medical center in Orland Park. So it will be a 120,000 square foot building, 4-story building, that has a pharmacy on the first floor, two floors of doctor's offices, all from University of Chicago, and then at some point in the future, the 4th floor would be day surgery or in and out surgery. They will have labs there for doing testing. They have x-ray rooms. So it's a full-fledged medical center, but with no beds and no emergency room. This is just a medical center for doctors and testing. So it's a win for Orland Park on 5 levels. First of all, having the University of Chicago in Orland Park is a plus. Second, they're bringing high-end jobs to Orland Park. We have plenty of retail jobs in Orland Park. We have plenty of retail sales clerks at Macy's and all the different stores and hostesses and waiters and waitresses at all our restaurants. But to start bringing in some higher-end, higher-paying jobs, University of Chicago is great for bringing in over 100 high-paying jobs: nurses, lab technicians, x-ray technicians, doctors, office managers. So the jobs they'll produce are great. They are talking about projections of 25,000 or so patients a year. Those patients coming in and out of this medical center through the course of the year will add a daytime crowd to our restaurants, who always struggle during the day. A lot of our restaurants do great at nights, especially weekends, but during the day they struggle. So bringing a daytime crowd to some of the restaurants in Orland Park will help all the restaurants succeed. In addition, we are selling that property. It's going to be a long-term lease sale. We are selling it for a tremendous dollar amount, where we are making a very good dollar, very good return on our investment for the property we originally bought there. And then lastly, the plan calls for a 2-deck parking garage. But rather than an unsightly garage above ground, it's 1 level at grade and 1 level below grade. It'll produce 550 or so parking spaces that we get to use on nights and weekends. When they're not busy, all other restaurants and businesses that'll be developing shortly in this triangle will be able to use that parking that they are building at their cost. So there's, like I said, the University of Chicago development is a win on at least 5 different levels, and we're very excited about seeing them come in. They should be breaking ground sometime in the spring. They're still working with our planning department on final plans, how the building's going to look and be laid out, in the parking lot and that. Next thing I want to mention real quickly, so here's our budget for the year. So the village board has spent 7 or 8 separate nights, separate from our village meetings, just going over the budget. We have spent hours and hours, and once again we have a balanced budget. We are getting a lot of work done in the village and providing a lot of services, so we're very happy about that. The final approval will be in a couple weeks, but we've been working hard on the village budget, and lost my notes here. We've been working hard on the village budget over the last probably 3 months, and we have done, we've taken a look at numerous things that we wanted to continue to do, like the flooding, addressing the flooding issues, continuing to do road work. I guess it's a good thing that Orland Park, one of our big problems has always been traffic congestion and not other problems that some communities deal with. But we have been addressing our road problems and congestion for years. Constantly doing neighborhood improvements to the streets, but also expansions, new turning lanes, new streets where we can. I don't know how many have experienced the new 156th Street that goes from LaGrange to Ravinia or West Avenue. Wilcook Road south of 159th to 179th was brand new a number of years ago, but these are brand new roads we're putting in or adding turning lanes wherever we can. We are going to try doing a traffic circle outside the Village Hall. We think that'll help traffic flow, but it'll also help people start to get used to what traffic circles are all about, because it is kind of a wave of the future in terms of traffic control. Taxes and rebates, which Carol will address a little bit more, but I do want to mention, somebody asked me a question earlier. I'll jump to your question about the Orland Park taxes. Everybody complains about taxes, including myself. And I will tell you that in my case, my tax bill on my home in Old Orland is about $9,000 a year. Somebody I was talking to earlier, their tax bill was about $7,000 a year. The village's portion of that tax bill is about somewhere in the neighborhood of 6%, give or take a little bit. So if your tax bill was $7,000, 10% is $700. So somewhere in the $500, $550 a year is what you pay to the village. If you get the tax rebate, you're now down to about $400 or $450 a year you pay to the village for street maintenance, snow plowing, police, recreational services. Now, the reason I mention recreational services, a lot of people move out from Chicago, Oak Lawn, some other areas out to Orland Park, and they don't realize all those other places, they had an extra line item on your tax bill for Park District. Chicago Park District, Oak Lawn Park District, Tinley Park has a Park District. We don't. So you don't have that extra line item on your tax bill. You're not paying separately for the Park District because it's a recreation department of the village. So we run it. It's part of our budget. It's part of our tax bill. So you really get a lot of services for that $400 or $500. The bulk of the tax bill is, and I think it's explained in this last public, the bulk of the tax bill is the school districts. School District 135 for most of Orland. There's a couple other grammar school districts that take in small parts of the village. And in the high school district, School District 230. So that's the bulk of your tax bill, their school districts. And I'm getting into that topic a little bit because I tell you, if you are inclined to write letters to state reps or state senators, or make phone calls or do emails, I think Joe Lamargo, where's Joe at? He's the president of the School District 135 board. And we have been attending, and Joe's been putting on some town hall meetings about a bill proposed in Springfield that would reallocate how school support from the state is distributed around from the different school districts. Well, the way this formula comes up, the Orland area is one of the hardest hit in the state. We would be losing about $15 million between our grammar school district and our high school district. Well, if they take $15 million from us, it's got to be made up somewhere. The school districts are either going to have to cut teachers, make classrooms bigger, cut programs, and or raise taxes. And we're doing our best to keep the line on taxes. That would be a killer. That would be a killer. So anybody that's inclined to write letters to your state reps and senators, what is Senate Bill 16?
Yes, that's correct.
So you could write or contact your senators or representatives about being opposed to Senate Bill 16. We understand there's some needs around the state for some schools that are struggling to get more support. We just don't think it's fair to punish the schools that are successful and are funded well and punish those just to help other districts. We'd like to help them, but we'd like to find some way that's fair. This is not fair, and it would really punish us in the Orland area. I think, unless there's some questions, I wanted to mention that, I did bring another printout here. When I talked about all the road work that we're doing in the last several years, we have spent on infrastructure and road projects in the state over the last 20 years, we have done $533 million worth of work. Some of that's IDOT and county money, but $254 million village put into those projects. We have been doing a lot of work in the Orland Park area for a long time. So I wanted to ask, I know there's a few people here, but how many here are Vietnam era veterans? Did you guys see these yet, or have you guys signed up for our program? Right now, all I want to do is give you one of these. Joe, do you mind? Well, all we're asking for right now is if you guys can email this site that's on here and give us your email address. The next 3 years, we partnered with the U.S. Department of not labor, Defense Department, to be a partner in commemorating the Vietnam War veterans over the next 3 years. So we're required as part of our partnership to put on at least two events every year in 2015, 16, and 17. So we wanted to start, as we're planning those events, we wanted to start by trying to gather emails, addresses of Vietnam veterans, and you don't necessarily have to be Orland Park if you want to mention some friends outside of Orland. All we want the email address for is to inform you when these different events are coming up, so you know that you're invited, because we really want the opportunity to say thanks for the service that you gave this country and all of us. So that's the purpose of this. Your email address will not be used for anything else. Matter of fact, there was a group or two that found out we were collecting email addresses of Vietnam veterans, and they asked us for the list because they wanted to use it for something else. We actually got our attorneys involved to protect the list and say this wasn't meant for anything other than informing our Vietnam veterans about events coming up. So that list won't be used for anything else. So with that, like I said, is there any questions on village issues or some things I didn't bring up before I introduce Carol? Yeah.
The widening of 143rd Street west of the Range Road.
143rd Street, Phase 1 engineering is done. And one of the things Phase 1 engineering does is kind of identify where the right-of-way is. Well, the initial Phase 1 engineering showed that if we're going to widen it to 2 lanes in each direction, we either need some property from the Forest Preserve District, or we're going to be right at the front doors of those houses on the south side of the street. And obviously that wouldn't work. So we've been negotiating for a couple of years with the Forest Preserve District to get us, or let us, purchase the right-of-way we need to widen 143rd Street. We finally worked out a deal with the Forest Preserve District that we would donate to them more property to add to the Forest Preserve District holdings than we need in right-of-way. So in other words, whatever the engineers determine, if we end up needing, say, 3 or 4 acres of right-of-way, the length of the forest preserves, we will donate 8 or 10 acres to them at 139th and 110th Avenue, where we own property adjacent to the forest preserves. So they finally liked that idea because the end result is they get more forest preserve property, not less. So now we're into Phase 2 engineering. So I would say the state's aware of it. It's on their long-range plan, so it's in the works. It probably won't be in the next year or two, but it's definitely planned for the next few years. Sometime in the next 5 years, I would say. But that's critical to us because not only all the action going on at 143rd and LaGrange, but the fact that 355 now has an entrance and exit ramps onto that expressway on 143rd Street. So that's going to be a more traveled route, and we need to widen it and make it improved. So
Dan?
It is in the works.
Phase 1 isn't finished from the railroad tracks to Wolf, but from Wolf to Will Cook, we're in Phase 2.
All right, so, but the whole thing's in the process, and we're looking forward to pushing it and getting it done soon. Same thing with 159th west of LaGrange Road. That's being worked on and engineered to widen 159th Street from about West Avenue or Ravinia West. So it's in the works. Any other questions? Yeah.
When are they going to put a light up on 104th and 159th, even a temporary light?
104th and 104th is a county road and 159th is IDOT. I know we've requested that before, but sometimes the other agencies don't always see the need for these. So it's numerous areas around the village. We see a need, we request stop signs or stop lights or turning lanes. Usually the other agency's first response is the traffic counts don't warrant it. So what we do is 6 months later we send them another letter, or we'll do the traffic count to show them that there is a warrant, it does warrant the improvements. I don't know what the latest is on that intersection, other than I know we have asked for that, but we need IDOT and the county to cooperate on it.
They've approved it, Dan, for the widening project.
As part of the project?
Part of the widening.
So I guess our efforts have worked out. If they've approved it for the future, it's just that not sure exactly when that's going to be put in.
Sometimes the traffic is backed up, 7 or 8 cars back running down 159.
Right. Yes, ma'am.
I was just going to say, there's the cemetery there, two.
Right.
And that, all that has, contributed to it, but ordinarily it is
Remember how that used to flood?
Yes.
It took us quite a while to keep hammering away at the county just to get them to improve that road. So, but if 159th Street I mentioned is in the works to be widened. So apparently the light is part of that project. I know we've been asking for it, but it's just a matter of when. Anything else? Yeah.
Just two questions. One, the University of Chicago Hospital Complex, where actually is that going to be sited at?
Well, the building itself is right on the corner, like where the old video store was.
Oh, okay.
And then their parking will be running from the building north along LaGrange Road, and then at the north end of that parking lot, before the next light, the new light, is potentially a restaurant site. So.
And then just one other thing. The apartment complex there is 9750. It'd be nice to have something like that on Harlem Avenue. There's a lot of vacant land on Harlem Avenue.
Yeah. Well, on Harlem, they just built, who's the developer of the...
There's a retirement.
Thomas Place opened up there, and it's hugely successful as well. You're right. And there's property on east side of the Thomas Place, and there is some initial plans for something similar.
There's another big piece of property just west of Home Depot, between Home Depot and where the Marquette Bank is. There's huge, about 10, 12 acres of land is for sale. And I'm wondering if there would be, I mean, not relatively specific, but I hear where Sam's Club wants to move to a better facility than what they have. Things like that. Is anything like that being investigated?
I haven't heard recently from Sam's. There was some talk about Sam's coming in somewhere near 159th and LaGrange at one point. That seemed to have gone away. I'll tell you what, all the properties in Orland that aren't developed right now are owned by somebody. They all want to make money on it, so they all want to come in and develop something. But we've got our requirements too. We don't want to just take anything. Matter of fact, somebody asked me a question, but why isn't the triangle filling up faster? Why isn't that? Are we having trouble with it? I said, not at all. We are getting phone calls all the time from developers that want to buy property in our downtown triangle, but most of them want to do your basic strip center, or they want to do something. They want to take advantage of what we've already started there, but it doesn't fit into what our long-range plans are. If we're going to make that a real viable, pedestrian-friendly, mixed-use development, it's got to be developed a certain way, and we can't just take anything. So we get a lot of requests for people going in there and some of these other properties. So we've had requests for storage units. You know, any developer that owns a piece of property is going to try and put something in that he thinks he can make a quick buck on, or make a good buck on. Doesn't necessarily mean it's something that we want in Orland Park. So storage units have been asked all frequently in different areas, especially along I-80. Warehouses. Now, warehouses have their place, but the problem with a warehouse, you could build a 200,000 square foot warehouse and you feel like you got this big development and it's great. The problem is a warehouse is probably going to produce about 4 workers, 2 guys on forklift trucks moving pallets around, and 1 guy in the office answering phone. That's not what we want. We want developments that are going to produce good jobs for the area, provide good real estate taxes, possibly sales tax, but there's a lot of requests for developments that we turned down. So, yeah.
And right in that area, Mariano's is going in.
You know where the P.F. Chang's is on LaGrange? The Mariano's would go in behind the P.F. Chang's.
Could they build pretty soon?
They initially, when they came through our approval process, said they've got a schedule of opening 5 new Mariano's every year. And they had 2015's 5 already set. So they told us they will be starting at the end of 2015 to open in 2016. But if one of those 5 scheduled for 2015 for some reason couldn't go forward, they would move ours up. So we always knew that it would be starting sometime the end of 2015 to open in 2016. So that's the current schedule. If one of their other 5 for this year goes away, for whatever reason, ours might get moved up a little sooner. Yeah?
What's the status of the property that Terry's used to own? Pete's Grocery was gonna go there, what are they doing with it?
All right, so Pete's bought the property, Terry's property, and they came to, all right, so just so you understand a little bit about the planning process, when somebody comes to us with a development, they come to us with their initial plans. Pete's came to us with their initial plans, like everybody else. Our planning department, who are the experts, they look it over and find all the things that don't fit our codes or our setbacks or all the different requirements we have. Excuse excuse me, and then they kick it back to the developer. That's the normal operating procedure. Here's your plan with our markings on it for, you need to move this over, you have too much lot coverage, so your building's too big for this size lot, you need more landscaping, you need more parking. Whatever they comment on, they send it back to the developer. In the case of Pete's, they brought in a drawing and what their plans were. Our department, planning department went through and made all the changes and all the suggestions and gave it back to them. Then quite frankly, they went silent for about 6-7 months. We didn't hear from them. In that 6 or 7 months, Mariano's comes in with a developer for the property near, back behind P.F. Chang's. Same thing. They showed us what they were planning. Where our department kicked it back and said, you gotta do this, this, and this is too close, or this is too big, or whatever. And Mariano's came right back. Their people went to work, they made all the changes, they went right back. So our department put it forward through the process. The planning commission has to approve it, then it goes to the planning committee of the board, and then it goes to the full board. So Mariano's went quick. Well, because Mariano's got approved by the board, and Pete's still didn't, right now Pete's holding back. They are not sure if they're gonna go forward because, like the village, we're gonna all wonder, does it make sense to have 2 big box grocery stores a block away? So that, they have to decide if they wanna take that step, and we have to decide if we would wanna approve a second grocery store that close. But right now, it's kind of in limbo because Mariano's is going to go up starting later next year. Any other? Yeah.
Does the 9750 have plans for another apartment building in that area?
No.
In the future, no?
No, the downtown triangle is about 27 acres. So our goals from the beginning were to have residential in there. If you're going to do a kind of a downtown development where you're encouraging pedestrian traffic and all that, you need to have people living there. So 9750 was a luxury apartment. We potentially will have some townhomes in that corner to the west of 9750, so for sale product there. Then there's another building that's a large building, potentially will be a large building like 9750, that would have commercial on the first floor and some condos above, a couple of floors of condos, so for sale product. So the idea would be a mixed use in that triangle. Train station, residential, commercial and office, and entertainment, restaurants, possibly theaters, that kind of thing. But even of the residential, we want mixed use. We don't want all rentals. That's the only rental building you'll see in there. Potentially some townhomes and condos. So you got 3 different types of housing stock in the triangle. So a mixed use in general and a mixed use of residential. Any other questions, comments? Yeah.
The old Andrew location, what's the plan for that?
You know, we just got done not too long ago with a, what do you call the process where you clean up the soil. There was some contamination near the tracks in the Andrew property. That's been done. I have not heard of them coming back, anybody coming back to us yet with a plan for that. Initially, before the market kind of crashed and we went into a recession or depression, there was a plan for single-family development in there, and then the other side of 153rd would be a more dense condo complex near the train station. Well, that went ahead. You could see that's moving ahead, and I'll tell you, it's hugely successful. But the north side of 153rd, where the residential single-family was going to go, right now nobody's proposing anything for that development. But we did at least get the contamination cleaned up, so something can move forward. Any other questions or comments? I really appreciate you coming out today, and like I said, maybe next month or next time I'll come up with a better speaker. But I thought I'd come and fill you in on what's going on in the village. But I'm really happy to have Carol Ruzick, one of our trustees, as chairman of finance. Not only put a tremendous amount of time into things that most of you don't realize a lot of time is being spent on. A lot of time was spent on a banking proposal recently for banking services for the village. A lot of time was spent on renewing our insurance policies for the village. But we did spend a lot of time recently on the budget, determined we could do the rebate again, and Carol wanted to have a kind of a rollout of the rebate process and the application process out where you can have easy access to it. So I am honored to introduce Trustee Carol Ruzick.
First, I want to thank you all for coming out this morning. Obviously, when we planned this, we didn't expect to be in the middle of a polar vortex. So I really appreciate you coming out today. And thank you to the mayor for inviting me to talk about the property tax rebate. You know, this is one of the things that I'm most proud of as being a trustee, and one of the things that I think really sets our village apart. As you guess or know, very few villages have a property tax rebate program. And just a little bit of history, you know, the first rebates were approved by the board back in 2002. The first checks were issued in 2003. And from 2003 until today, the village has been, you know, proud to rebate $34.5 million to its residents. For a couple of years there, you know, during the recession, the village did suspend the rebate program as part of their overall belt tightening, which I think was the, you know, really the fiscally prudent thing to do. And then 2 years ago, you know, we looked at things, and obviously the sales tax was coming back, the overall economy was improving, and we decided to bring the rebate back. And again, for this year, we've approved 2.2, and again, when we brought it back, again, in trying to be fiscally prudent, we brought it back on a reduced basis, because as many of you probably still know, the economy is still, you know, depending on what report you read, you know, the recession's over or it's just around the corner again. So we brought it back on a reduced basis, and again, for this year, we approved a rebate of $2.2 million in property taxes to our residents. For next year, for the 2015 proposed budget, we've again approved or budgeted $2.2 million, but I know the mayor agrees with me on this, that our goal as the economy continues to improve, our goal for next year is to find more money than the $2.2 million from projects that, you know, were funded but didn't get to be completed. You know, our goal is to bring that to a higher level next year, and then eventually over the course of the next couple of years bring it back to the level that we had originally, which is 100% property tax rebate of the share that you pay the village. That's our goal, and I know the mayor's in agreement, as are most of the board members. Let's see. So the process, let's talk a bit about the process. When we brought the rebate back, we really tried to streamline the process. Anybody who fills out applications knows that the hassle of the paperwork that goes along with them deters some people. So we streamlined the process so that the amount of paperwork was reduced, and that if you have access to a computer and if you're computer savvy, it can be done pretty quickly online. The only documents that you need, whether in paper or online applications, are a copy of your second installment real estate tax bill, last year's, and a copy of your driver's license. And if you have an Orland Park water account, you don't need anything else other than those two documents. We've got everything else that we need. So I think it was really, we really tried to find better ways to streamline it so that more people would participate and it wouldn't be as big a hassle. This year we decided also in keeping with that, to try and make it more accessible to people, we decided to do this like we're doing today, which is to offer one-on-one assistance to people who maybe don't have access to a computer, or, you know, just it's not convenient for them to do it via the computer. So we had 5 days set aside, today being one of them, in which we've asked the finance department to set up staff available with their computers that you can go right up to them and they basically will complete the application for you, okay? We have 2 more days in case you don't have your paperwork today, or in case you know of neighbors or relatives who didn't get a chance and would still like to take advantage of the one-on-one assistance. We have, let's see, those dates are Saturday, December 6th from 9 to noon, and that would be in the Village Hall, and on December 11th from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. We're also going to have staff available on that day to provide this one-on-one assistance. In my understanding, and speaking with our finance director, is that this approach has been very successful, and we've had a lot of people take advantage of the one-on-one. So we may even look to expand that next year. you know, if overall we feel that it was a success. So the other thing I wanted to talk about are the options for receiving your rebate. You have 4 options. Your first is they mail you a check, which is probably the most, you know, popular option. The other over the course of the last couple of years when we brought it back, we also gave the residents an option to take the rebate in the form of a credit to your water bill. You can also have a choice to make either some or all of your rebate as a donation to the open lands. And then new for this year, in keeping with advancing technology, is you're going to have the option to choose a direct deposit to your bank account. And obviously you would need to, you know, provide us with that information if you'd like to take advantage of that. We have a property tax rebate hotline, which you can find on the website. The number is 403-3086. If you have any questions, they're there, you know, 8 to 5 to answer any questions you have. Now, if you miss any of the days, or if you know of anybody who misses the days that we've set aside for the one-on-one assistance, any day you can come to the Village Hall, and people will be there to help you with your application if you don't get it done during one of these days and you need it. I think that's all I have to say about the process and kind of the history. We have people here today. I also...
Joe can explain how they're doing it today.
Okay, Joe will explain to you how they're doing it today. But does anyone have any questions for me on the rebate? No? Okay, good.
Thank you, Mayor McLaughlin and Trustee Ruzek, for coming up here and speaking on that. Just as a reminder, too, that December 12th is the last day to hand in your application for the tax rebate, December 12th. So we've got a couple options here for everyone today. As Trustee Ruzek had alluded to, we have one-on-one assistance there. If anyone needs an application, if you could raise your hand, and I've got Kathy and Alex that will come by and hand you an application that you could start filling out. If you have your information all filled out, we have chairs set back right outside these doors right there. There's chairs back up there, and members from our finance department staff will start taking you in and filling out the application or processing the rebate. Then if you have all your information and your time is precious to you, and you've got to be someplace and you've got all your information, I'd ask that you go back there still, have a seat, and one of the staff members from the finance department will make sure that you have all your information. They'll take it from you, they'll give you a receipt. Everyone will get a receipt today. You get a receipt that you've handed the information in, and then they can process it at a later time, and you don't have to sit around and wait. So, are there any questions on any of that? Okay, if you need an application, can you just raise your hand just so, and just kind of keep it raised, and Alex and Kathy are going to pass them out there. Oh. I'm sorry, I'm having a hard here. Well, that's a confirmation that it's been received. The email you'll get another email, I believe, to Anne-Marie, is that correct? Another email stating that it's been approved as well.
You get an email saying it's not approved?
I'm looking back at our.
Email saying that it was not approved. Can you do something?
Right. Actually, I'm going to ask our finance director to come up here. She could probably answer that question better than I can.
He wants to know if you get email if they're not.
Not approved, right? Exactly. We have our finance director right here. She can answer that specific question for you. No, that's fine. I'll get it. Be careful what you're saying.
Yeah, so as we go through all the applications that we receive and we process them, if you provided your email address, once it's approved, you'll get an email telling you it's approved. If it's not approved for some reason, most likely one of our staff will reach out to you by phone or by letter to let you know why and allow you to provide the information that we're missing.
Does that answer your question?
How long do we have to wait for this?
Well, we usually, the deadline is December 12th. It usually takes us until about the end of February to process all of them. So we just process them as we go along. So you'll get an email right when it's approved. I can't tell you exactly when that'll be though. Sometime before the end of February.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, did everybody get an application that needed an application? Okay, with that, if you have, right in this hallway right there, we've got chairs that you can have a seat and everything, and they can start assisting you. Thank you so much for coming, and we still have plenty of donuts and coffee and juice there, so help yourself to that as well. Thank you.